Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
And so maybe you want to mention.
All right. So before
we
go on to some of the specifics of what went down in the Sullivan Chamber, I just want to mention two really, at least from my point of view, from people I've known, two significant passings. One is Bob Richards. Bob Richards was a neighbor of mine who lives on Antrim Street.
Did live in
And he was, until recently.
No. Apparently I sent a letter and I got returned. I think Jane is in Uville now. So.
Right, yeah. So they moved up to Broadway and then to Uville, right? But so Bob passed away in, I think it was December 19th.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's, like, everybody knew Bob. He worked at the CRLS as a teacher. And in the political world, he was sort of just a person everybody knew and everybody liked, So it was a very sort of a sad thing. I was actually speaking last night with his daughter, Susan, and and just how many people actually showed up at the services for it. It was really quite impressive.
I couldn't go, but
yeah. I mean, Bob and I would talk politics a lot, right? But we'd also talk about other things too. And he was actually one of the co-founders of the longest running block party in the city, the Antrim Street Block Party.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you went to the funeral?
I did not. I did not.
It was on the 4th. Yeah.
But I heard. Another person is Gil Albert. Now, I don't know how many people, a lot of old-time Cambridge people will know him, but it was a late resolution for him.
Yeah.
So Gil, I first met him. I didn't know him particularly well, but I met him back when I was friends of the person who was running Sheila Russell's political campaign many, many years ago.
It goes way back.
So you get introduced to Gil, and it's like, it was great, But the thing, one rather remarkable thing, and I think it's an interesting statement about Cambridge, is that he has 8 children, 6 sons, all of whom are police or firefighters.
Wow.
In either Cambridge or Holyoke, Massachusetts.
That's not that unusual, I don't think.
No, right. The reason I was going to mention is that there are some families where it's sort of like a family tradition. And one of it is Jack Albert, who's was deputy superintendent, who was a good friend and a great guy. So this is his dad. So anyway, so just want to make a note about passing of Gil. Anyway, more details, I suppose you can check it out in the paper, right?
Yeah.
Actually, another mention here, just in terms of political families, is that Gil's nephew is actually former Cambridge Teachers Association president and former city council, and I think will also be a city council candidate in 2009, Paul Toner, right? That's his nephew. So. So this is sort of the this is the blood that runs through the city of Cambridge, to be sure. So anyway, back to city council related stuff. Okay. So in addition to some of these other things we were speaking about in the first half hour, there were some pretty substantial items. Not so much action items, but sort of initiating items that will become larger things a little bit down the road. I mean, there were no ordinances to pass. There was no zoning legislation to finalize or anything like that. So it was more sort of introducing a few things that are going to become kind of real deals. One of the items was actually, I think there were 3 items on the agendas.
About the arts, you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So, and I don't know how long this arts task force that is chaired by Alana Mallon. But I was reading some of the ideas that were being thrown out by the committee report,
and they definitely that's where.
And then they are reflected in these orders,
exactly.
And they're basically, just not to summarize them entirely here, but one proposal was to dedicate a certain percentage of the hotel motel tax, which is
what exists now. What's this 1% thing that?
That's what we'll get to that one here.
All right,
okay. So again, city doesn't have the right to just tax because it wants to tax. It's always done through state enabling legislation or a home rule petition. Okay. So, but the thing is city does derive revenue through a hotel motel tax because the state said you can do that.
Right.
Actually, they told every city in town you can do that.
And restaurants. Too.
Right. So then there's I think you get some additional tax from that. Right. There's because when the legalization of recreational or what they call adult use cannabis, that also involves some relatively modest tax that's associated with that.
isn't it? It's
Well-
pretty high. I don't know.
I think that there was still some discussion about making it not too high.
You talking about in the city?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But anyway, so there's going to be some tax money for that. So one of the ideas that was floated is in the form of a city council order last night was to dedicate a percentage of the hotel motel revenue as well as future revenue from cannabis sales.
And the short-term rental? Or is that different?
Different.
Okay.
But to dedicate it toward arts in Cambridge. All right. There was in a similar fashion, when the Barrett petition was passed a couple of years ago, there was a notion to set up a Central Square Improvement Fund, which actually hasn't really been set up.
Right.
But so now it's saying like, okay, Mr. City Manager, please set it up and dedicate at least 25% of it for arts programming. All right. There was also a proposal, a little imprecise, suggesting changes, not particularly specified changes, in the 1% for the arts ordinance. Right now, if you're doing a major public project, a city building, a school building, then you basically take whatever the budget is and you take 1% of it, and then that has to be
But
dedicated
the arts
to
that
arts
are
program.
within those buildings, though, there was some
Within the
discussion
building,
that isn't
yeah.
always public.
So, for example, when Central Square, we had, was it $5 million of improvements we did in the mid to late 90s in Central Square. So you had to take 1% of that and then do some art project.
And were those the murals?
No, that's only relatively recently.
No, but the old
those were all
murals.
privately done. Those are not publicly
really?
funded. But basically, there's an art piece that's in the middle of Carl Barron Plaza.
Okay,
That was
so you're
the outgrowth
okay.
of that.
I see.
Right? Now, one of the things that I remember about this at the time was that the architects that were working with and the planners for doing some of the changes to Central Square, when they narrowed the roadway and put in wider sidewalks and put in an extra row of trees, and they put in bus shelters and various other things, is that one of the things I kind of came to understand is that people who work in that line of work really do view themselves as artists.
Yeah.
And some of them are legitimate artists, and sort of in addition to what they do professionally. Yet the way things are sort of segregated, the thing is that they can't do the art as part of the project. So you have to bring in an outside artist to do the art component.
Well, I wouldn't say they're all artists that do.
I didn't say they were all, but the thing is, some of them really are.
Well,
And
all right.
to me, I always felt that when you're doing some of these projects, to have a much more integrated way of incorporating the art into the projects could work well. I'll give you an example of one case of 1% for the art where it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And even though there had been a prior proposal which was rejected. That was when they were doing the reconstruction of the water treatment plant at Fresh Pond. So originally the proposal from Mags Harries was that there was going to be this sort of cascade of the water, rather than anonymously entering Fresh Pond in a pipe, was going to kind of cascade almost waterfall-like down into the pond, which I actually liked.
Yeah.
Right, but there were some people said, "Oh no, it's going to ruin the
That's right. There
pastoral
was a little
nature," and there was a lot of
controversy,
controversy. So I said, "Okay, regroup, come up with a different idea." So what came out of it was this incredible work of art, which is the floor of the water treatment facility, which is a complete replication of a map of the city with brass, I think it's brass, inlaid, showing the water system for the whole city. So it's incredibly educational, and it's beautiful to look at.
So rather than being outside, it's
inside. But it was really good.
Yeah.
But the point is that it is so well integrated with the whole idea of a water treatment facility.
Right.
So that's a really successful example, I think, of integrating arts into a major public project. Some of the others, I'm not so sure. They look a little kind of temporary.
There must be a list of these, right? I think the
Oh, yeah, I'm sure,
community development has a list of art.
The Arts Council is
or the
who
Arts
administers
Council.
these
Okay,
things.
that's true. Yeah.
So anyway, so this other order here says, recommends changes to the 1% for the arts. Now, I don't know whether that changes, they mean it shouldn't be 1%, it should be like 2% for the arts or 5% for the arts.
Yeah.
But there's something kind of ridiculous about an idea like that, in that if it's, projects used to cost a certain amount of money, and then 1% was 1%. Now they cost 5 times as much, which means 1% is 5 times as much money,
Yeah.
even under the current ordinance. So
Okay.
I'm not so sure that this needs to be changed. Maybe some of the procedures about it and the standards
Yeah.
could be changed a little bit, but in any case, shining a bit more light on how we do arts administration and how we do funding for these projects isn't a bad thing, right? Even if we come out of it and still we don't make any fundamental changes to how we do it.
Yeah.
As far as some of the other ones about dedicated revenue streams for the arts, I'm a little uneasy about
There was a little
this
pushback
generally.
from one of a very frequent commenter about housing and homeless and how the arts are.
Well, yeah, but
surpassing
see,
that.
this is one of the problems that I
Yeah.
have is that to me, there's a reason why we actually have budgets and budget hearings and
Mm-hmm.
process. Now, granted, the city council rarely changes things as part of the budget process. But the thing is that it's not like there's funds being denied to these various priorities, but it's currently being done through a deliberative, thoughtful, inclusive process where all possible priorities are being balanced against each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a problem when you basically say, well, we had a series of meetings and we've decided that it would be great to have 25% of this revenue stream go to the arts. Well, there's a lot of other interests in the city too, like water infrastructure, or child care facilities, or something.
Well, just because they say it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's just.
But to me, the whole notion of you sort of like, quick, let's push this here and say, well, this money has to go toward this
Well,
specific
you throw
priority.
it at the wall and you see what sticks. I mean,
Right.
I don't blame him for doing it.
All right, so I view this as sort of kicking off a process which hopefully
Yeah.
will lead to a resolution where other interests also are represented, and what comes out of it is something that's a little more holistic.
Well, tell me about the short-term rental potential
Okay.
income because the state finally passed something.
Yeah.
Where would that money go? And is that in the ordinance?
I don't actually know. I'm a little
Okay.
curious about that myself because I should remember the
Mm-hmm.
ordinance that we passed here more precisely. I know that
Mm-hmm.
there was going to be a fee to support. So the money that could be potentially generated if ever the state legislature acted through short-term rental regulation.
Well, they did act. It
They
is
did,
passed.
right. But the thing is, when we
yeah.
passed it, we didn't have the authority to
Exactly,
get the money at
right,
the time. We could
right.
regulate. We could say that you can't
Well, we can
operate.
collect our own money, right?
Not unless the
Really?
state says yay.
Oh,
So, but the thing is, we could certainly regulate, right? So now the
see.
state did act late in the
so
session,
now we can figure out how to.
and
yeah.
now the issue is okay. What and you have to. And I tried reading it, and honestly, I have to tell you,
Which way, ours or the state?
the states,
The
right?
state, it's
tough read.
onerous because
It's a tough read.
each city can actually add their own tax on top of what they're talking about,
Right.
which it might be 6% or so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the question then is that does what the enabling legislation
Yeah.
from the state passed in late December, how does that mesh in with the city's short-term rental
Well,
regulations?
they were looking forward to it. I remember who
Oh,
was the tax
they
cut?
needed
Reardon?
it.
Is that
They
his
needed
name?
it.
Yeah, they
But,
wanted that.
The
yeah.
question is that revenue dedicated toward specific things, or does it just go into the general fund?
Oh,
I actually would prefer that it go into the general fund, but
you're talking about in terms of our
of ours
proceeds.
or even
I
the
see.
states,
The states,
But-
it probably
but-
goes into the general
But then
fund.
there are
I
some
don't
who
know.
would say, well, but this is housing related, therefore
Right, it
any
should
money
go
generated
into-
should go
yeah.
into quote affordable housing,
Yeah.
right?
I'll do some homework on that and try to figure out
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
we
it's
could
kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
And that actually relates to another city council order from last night, which
the real estate
which
transfer?
actually brought out a lot of commentary during public comment period.
Yeah.
Not all positively, and even the positive one had qualifying aspects. So this had to do with a proposed real estate
Right.
transfer
Which has come up
tax.
before, it seems like, in every council.
It's an idea that gets floated. It's potential.
And also statewide, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a state.
Right. So there's
In
a
Boston,
potential. It could be some potential serious money generated, and on the very positive side of the idea is that if you have sort of real estate speculation going on wildly,
Yeah.
where somebody purchases some parcel for X number of millions of dollars, and then 3 years later they flip it and they sell it for twice as much, and they were all just sort of moving property back and forth, and people making more and more money. If there was a tax on every time there was a transfer, right, either on this whole amount or on
Yeah.
the amount
The gain.
above a certain
Yeah.
level, that could generate a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? Now, what would actually happen if there was a tax like that? One person during public comment, I think, correctly pointed out that, well, then it would just be reviewed as the cost of doing business, and any tax
Oh,
here
right.
would
It's
simply
gonna
be
just
passed along in
raise
the form
rents.
of
Yeah, I heard
higher
that person.
expenses
Yeah.
of, for whatever projects actually ended up being built.
Yeah.
It would just get absorbed into the project.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's potentially true,
yeah.
right? But then the city says, oh, but it's a cash cow. We can make a pile of money. And then they say, well, okay, if that's true, should that money go into the general fund to support everything the city does? Or should it be
This is
dedicated?
residential real estate, not commercial, because
It's
it's already,
both.
really?
It's both,
But aren't
yeah.
there linkage fees and everything with commercial
Well,
real
see, that's the
estate?
thing that I think
I'm
is a
really
bit misleading
confused.
last night.
Yeah.
It's that it's
I
not
thought it
like,
was mainly residential.
I mean, the thing is that, there's the buying and selling of real estate, but the thing is also when you go get your permit, you have a linkage fee you have to pay. If you're going to build housing, then the city
Well, then
already
you have the inclusionary thing.
right, and
Yeah.
and that's not
Okay.
free. I mean
Right.
it ends up being free in terms of the city not having to fund it.
I think this was aimed at private people buying $2 million homes. That's what I was taking from it, not
Well, I think
and
some of the
condos.
public commentary
yeah.
basically said, and I think Somerville passed a
Well,
home rule petition.
yeah, which is
because this
still
is what this would be too.
Right, and that's on the state. It's
Right.
being decided. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, it has to get refiled.
All right.
But they don't. The city of Somerville doesn't have to revote it at all.
I see.
Right. They just need another sponsor
They're
to
now
refile it.
counselors now, by the way.
I know
Yeah.
now they're not
Not
aldermen
aldermen
anymore.
anymore,
They're city
counselors.
councilors. Considering the particular individuals who were elected in the last municipal
Yeah.
election in Somerville, they really should just be change them to comrades.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly aren't paid like our city
Right.
councilors, so that's for sure.
That's true. That is
Yeah.
true. Right.
All right. So what? So
so-
where would this?
So anyway, some people I think would like that any revenue generated from a transfer tax should be dedicated toward the purchase of subsidized housing.
Right.
The subsidized housing things.
Right.
I don't personally agree with that. I just think if it's a revenue source, it's a revenue source, and I still think that thoughtful citywide budgeting really should
Should go to the general fund.
should go to the general fund. And
Yeah.
but people are trying to take a big bite of the apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you could generate like $100 million out of a fund and you dedicate it toward one use, that's a little funny to
I
me.
mean, I'd rather that money go to our infrastructure.
Well, it
There you
also,
go. It's like get those pipes.
but
replaced.
it kind of goes against the whole concept of city management when in
Yeah.
fact all the decisions about where the money comes from and where it goes
Yeah.
are all being decided
Yeah.
and encoded into ordinances
Yeah.
prior to the city
Right.
management making recommendations for
right.
how to prioritize
Yeah.
city funds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have some major
Yeah.
issues with this way of doing business,
yeah.
right? But it seems to be a bit of a pattern that's emerging here of that more and more sort of taking control from city management and putting it into the hands of the political people. Actually, there's another order that was on the agenda last night that was, I don't think there was any discussion of it at all, but it
You're
was.
talking about the last one about city councilors being on.
Yeah, did they talk about that? at
No.
all? All right, so that
It
just,
wasn't
they
discussed,
breezed
yeah.
through.
So to refresh our memories, it was.
Okay, so right now, when there's a city is doing a big project, like they're making a decision about a school building or doing all these things, the city manager brings in advice from city staff. Sometimes they are members of the public or sort of who have some expertise in this are sort of brought in to help along.
Yeah.
Whatever, architects and whatever, right?
Major Public Building Project Selection Committee representation. That was order 14.
So there's an
yeah.
order there last night where the city councilors are saying, well, we would like it to be the case that at least one city councilor must be on these selection
Yeah.
committees. And I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute, okay? There's a reason why when back in, many, many decades ago, when the particular city manager form of government was established and the Plan E charter was made available, and the Plan D charter as well, prior to that, without proportional representation, the idea was you wanted to have a bit of a separation between management and the politics. So you have your policy makers who set the policies, and then they hire the manager, and the manager carries out the policies.
Okay.
When you start kind of breaking down that line and you start saying, well, we want to have some of the elected officials be part of the team who's making the management decisions, which, and let's face it,
So it's mixing the politics with the,
it's just like leaping right over the boundary between these two fundamental. The responsibilities of the political people and the management people are separated for a good reason.
yeah,
And the place they come together is when they meet on Monday night in the city council meeting, and city councilors, and I should say a majority of city councilors, pass an order saying, Mr. Manager, we want you to do this.
yeah,
Not one city, you can't have one city councilor say, well, I've just filed an order, so Mr. Manager, do this. That has no weight at all, right? So the thing is the council has to come to some consensus about what they feel the manager should do, and then they request the manager to act on it. It's not an absolute mandate, because the manager could say, well, look, and that's going to cost so much money to do that it's going to bankrupt the city. I can't do that. And then, of course, ultimately the city council has the ultimate control. They can say, well, Mr. Manager, you're not doing anything we want, so we're going to fire you.
that's rare though, to go that far, right?
It has not happened very often.
Yeah.
Right, but the thing is that even with a contract, the city manager does, according to the charter, serve at the pleasure of the city council. And on any given Monday night, the city council could fire the manager, but they won't. But just saying is that that's
But
the
then
way
they'd
it
also
works.
have to fire some of the people from
I know.
community development,
It has often been referred to
Yeah.
as the nuclear option,
yeah,
right? Because it's not something you ever really want to do.
always seemed,
All right, the way it would
Yeah.
work is maybe when nowadays I think the modern procedure would be when somebody's manager's contract is up, then you would make a decision whether to extend it
To
or not.
renew it, yeah.
That's typically how it would be done. But at least in principle, the manager does serve at the pleasure of the council, but the manager's responsibility is
Yeah.
fundamentally separate from that of the political leadership.
well,
And
who are on these selection committees generally?
it's really it's at the discretion of the manager to make those
But-
decisions.
I mean, is it
The-
people from the city? Is it citizens?
Typically, one thing is that when Bob Healy was manager, Richie Rossi was always a central part of every capital project.
Yeah,
And he was sort of a person who was really riding herd on a lot of it.
yeah.
I mean, that was
He's aware of the budget. He's aware.
that was
yeah.
Richie's really special talent.
Okay.
But the thing is that if it was something involving school buildings, certainly the superintendent of schools, the people who are fundamentally.
But do you have stakeholders? I mean, do you have, like in schools, do you have parents? Don't they have meetings with people that are
I don't know if it. Yeah,
regular
I think
citizens?
right. So I think the manager and maybe the city council has requested this. I don't recall. It's sort of good practice to get get some of these voices involved in
Yeah.
there. But there's something a little tricky about having a city councilor serve on it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I don't see why they can comment,
Yeah.
because it is political. Then.
Yeah, I'm actually spacing out a little bit now. There was a controversy just this past month where there was this climate action thing, I think, pursuant to the failed
right.
Brown petition.
Mayor McGovern actually
Right,
wanted
so they wanted to have like
he
four.
appointed,
They wanted to have four city
Yeah.
councilors
and
on
then
this
he realized that was
committee,
not a
and
good
then
idea.
in the end they modified the proposal, and now they have 0 city councilors on it, which.
And not even an assistant to the mayor? I thought there was somebody that, I
They
don't
could have had Will could have
Yeah,
served on,
or-
but
or
they
he's the
chose
ch-
not
yeah.
to. But these are
Yeah.
something. It's interesting to me that to watch, especially some of the newer counselors, sort of very energetically want to make sort of these changes because they think they're good ideas, whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not really thinking the long view about the reason why we actually
have those things. Yeah.
like a charter division. I mean, you could easily imagine a situation where you have a city councilor who's just laying the law down at these meetings, pretty much saying, Mr. Manager, you damn well better hire such and such a firm. It wouldn't have any weight, but the thing is that it would be a difficulty, to be sure. So anyway, I hope that this goes nowhere, and my presumption is that the city solicitor will say, well,
Yeah,
this has problems.
yeah.
But we'll see. I don't want to presume
Right.
what Nancy Glow is going to say about
Right.
that. One other item, I don't know where it goes and whether it's just going to be perfectly
Oh, the green.
symbolic. I guess it is perfectly symbolic. So
Did they talk about that? Yeah, they did. 'cause
Quentin
I'm
Zondervan
afraid-
pulled it, and they did talk about it.
But they didn't vote on it, did they?
It's not really much to do. I mean, I don't
No,
know
but what did it?
I actually don't know.
No, the vote was to endorse it and to
All right.
send that on. I
Right.
don't remember.
If there was anything other than saying we think this Green New Deal is a wonderful, wonderful thing, great, 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 but it doesn't affect anything that the city does. So
No, but
there's no downside to the city council passing it.
That's true. Yeah.
But as one of the things I pointed out about it is that if you've got sort of a new what's her name
Alexandria
Ocasio-Cortez
Yeah.
from New York,
Cortez,
basically
yeah.
saying, I insist that you
Ocasio-Cortez,
must pass this new Green Deal, and then meanwhile Nancy Pelosi is chosen as the new speaker, and then says, no, actually, well, I think a better procedure would be to do such and such a thing. So when the city council says, let's do what Ocasio-Cortez says, they are fundamentally saying, don't do what Speaker Pelosi says.
Well, it says just resolved that the council go on record urging our congressional delegation, that means all of them, to
Yeah.
continue advocating for such a Green New Deal
Yeah.
and to make climate credit. So it is kind of.
Yeah, but the thing is that in the language, there's actually something that reads almost like an accusation of corruption about some of the leadership team from Pelosi because they're taking money from people in the fossil fuel industry. And I thought, well, that really shouldn't be in the city council order.
But it
but I
doesn't
think
really
they just-
say that. I don't
Well-
know. I mean, I haven't read the Green Deal thing, so I don't
But
know.
anyway, they waved it through. So,
Yeah.
it's symbolic anyway. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. So that was basically the bulk of what happened.
And there is a meeting next week, yes?
I think council does meet again this coming
And then-
Monday,
then I think
and then the
there's,
following week is
it's a
Martin Luther
holiday.
King's holiday.
And then is there a round table, or is that they have a round table plus a meeting?
Soon enough, but I don't know exactly
Yeah,
when.
okay.
Yeah. So
There is an ordinance meeting Wednesday,
ordinance committee on
5
tree
o'clock.
ordinance tomorrow at 5:30. So if you're interested, be there. See ya.
See ya.